barely 22 years old, and has revealed himself to be a man with the spirit of Bobby Moore, Steve Redgrave, Martin Johnson and Jackie Stewart. And delivered the perfect lap. It was almost as if his car was being pulled around the circuit on some invisible piece of thread. That's the grid then for this afternoon's Grand Prix. Hamilton's 11th front row start of the season, his 6th pole. Raikkonen alongside, and I quite fancy him this afternoon to take the fight to Hamilton. He has nothing to lose, Kimi Raikkonen. Hamilton, a podium will do it for him. Massa and Fernando Alonso, who must finish behind Hamilton, ideally, for Hamilton to win the World Championship. He will be fighting his way through as well. Coulthard, best of the season for him. Ralf Schumacher in 6th place alongside. Weber Heidfeld on row 4. Row 5, Jenson Button with Robert Kubica. Tonio Liuzzi's best of the season, equal with an earlier one. Kovalainen and Davidson in the second half of the grid. The Renault's not really quite firing this Grand Prix. We'll bring the curtain down on it. And can Hamilton win the championship a race early? Everyone pulls away from the grid.
I wonder if anybody sort of mid-pack back may just decide to come in and put dry tyres on now, whether they'll leave it a lap or two. It really depends if it starts raining again. Let's see who's second-guessed that right, because there has been no damp practice at all through the weekend. So the next lap will be the first lap they've done in these conditions.
Lewis Hamilton on the right, Kimi Raikkonen on the left with Alonso behind him. 5 lights. It's go! Great start by Raikkonen. He's pulling alongside Lewis Hamilton, who's also got a good start. Massa has got himself in front of Alonso and swung out wide. They go into turn 1 and in grid order. Alonso's looking around the outside though of Massa, looking for the additional grip out there. And Hamilton leads it. Raikkonen is second. It's wheel barging between Alonso and Massa, and Alonso takes the place from Massa, and Ralf Schumacher from 6th place on the grid has spun out.
Yeah, Schumacher getting tagged, I'd imagine, and it was so close for Alonso to go round as well. Massa's coming back up the inside of him into turn 6. Alonso suddenly spots him and he's back down to 4th place. Meanwhile, Hamilton with a nice gap up front to Kimi Raikkonen, and a good fight then, 3rd, 4th, 5th. David Coulthard getting away very well in the Red Bull 2, holding his grid position. So only Ralf Schumacher then with a problem in the first half of the lap. It's 3 abreast into turns 8 and 9.
Hamilton leads, Raikkonen is second, Alonso's 3rd.
We've seen the Ferrari has been very quick. He did gain a little bit if he gets anywhere near the gearbox. Hamilton, surely he'll have enough straight line speed. The Toro Rosso going up the inside of Mark Webber in the Red Bull. Certainly they're all treading very cautiously. They learned very much from 7 days ago that to finish first you must finish, and it's all about surviving this afternoon.
Hamilton, Raikkonen, Massa, Alonso, the front 4. Coulthard has held off Nick Heidfeld, who's having a great battle with Tonio Liuzzi in the Toro Rosso over 6th and 7th places. Just behind them is Mark Webber in the second of the Red Bull cars in 8th place, and Robert Kubica, who is running in 9th place. We've got contact there between a Honda and a Super Aguri. Looks like Rubens Barrichello is one of the cars. He was racing against Takuma Sato and Anthony Davidson, so I'm not sure which of those two it was who spun, but they were scrapping over 14th place.
It's looking quite dry out there again. It's heading that way. Kubica 9 for BMW, then Kovalainen 10. This then are the 2 Williams squabbling over 15th place.
A podium with Alonso behind him on the finish this afternoon would give him the World Championship. We're riding on board with Sebastian Vettel, who's battling with Heikki Kovalainen over 10th place. It's Hamilton, Raikkonen, Massa, Alonso, and as Vettel goes down the inside into the hairpin. That is the passing place of choice here. So far this afternoon, we saw Robert Kubica passing Mark Webber just a moment ago to that very same spot. And now Kubica is all over the back of his teammate, BMW, Nick Heidfeld, in 7th place. And we're looking at an onboard with Jarno Trulli, who's in 12th place, having a scrap with Heikki Kovalainen, who's just been passed by Sebastian Vettel. And it looks as though Trulli's wheel to wheel with him. The back of the circuit that's going through towards turn 11. Jenson Button, 10th on the grid, drops down to 13th as Rosberg has a go to try and take that place away from him. There he goes.
Much greater straight line speed, obviously came off that turn 13 better, and no answer there for Jenson because Rosberg gets the turning point. Jenson tries to switch back underneath. We're hearing that it's starting to rain again, but again Rosberg has got the racing line into the final turn. A great scrap going on there. Kovalainen and Rosberg now, Button and Ralf Schumacher, Alex Wurz quickly coming onto the back of that pack too.
For Hamilton, the race leader, on lap 15, so a pretty early pit stop for him. Kimi Raikkonen will take over the lead of this race. The margin at the moment is just under 9 seconds as Lewis Hamilton comes down to into the pit lane, and Ted Kravitz is there.
It is a couple of laps early than the paddock wisdom had it. They had that we were actually going to come in. Lewis was going to come in on lap 17, but isn't that significant? They're keeping on the tyres for Lewis Hamilton. A decent slug of fuel, a straight 2 stopper for Lewis, but they're keeping on that set of tyres. They're getting into a nice, warm, hot working temperature.
Well, he was 29 seconds ahead of 5th place man Coulthard, so he should get out of the pits and not be in traffic. But I tell you what, I hope it doesn't rain too hard with that front left tyre. We've seen this before where they let the and there he is. He's come out ahead of David Coulthard, so that's worked out nicely in terms of not getting in the traffic.
David, we think the conditions will be the same. You moderate rain. What do you think about the tyres? I think you'll be reading again before the stop, changing the tyre. If it doesn't, leave them.
If it rains again before my pit stop, change the tyres. If it doesn't, leave them. That's what Hamilton's just done. But did you see how bald his left front tyre was? That's the tyre that takes all the pain around here. There's a couple of very, very long, constant radius and opening out radius right-hand corners that puts all the load on the front left tyre. Now you can see it from Kimi Raikkonen's perspective as he comes out of one of those very corners. How's his front left tyre looking? But we believe that Raikkonen is carrying more fuel. Massa 2 leaves the same set of tyres on, and the $100 million question now is how far into this Grand Prix can Kimi Raikkonen go? But of course, let's not forget that even if Raikkonen wins this race, as long as Hamilton is on the podium and Alonso's behind him, he's still the world champion.
So it hasn't worked out in terms of traffic for Felipe Massa. He's now behind the Toro Rosso of Antonio Liuzzi into the pit lane with extra caution. That's concrete with some water on top of it, and it becomes a bit of a slick, a bit of an emulsion. You have to be extra careful approaching your pit garage in those conditions.
So Hamilton took on 6.8 seconds. He was stationary for. That's how much fuel he took on. 6.9 for Massa, 7.7 for Alonso. So he's fueled slightly longer as he comes out. Where does he come relative to Massa? Not quite close enough to Felipe Massa. He was trailing him by a couple of seconds before the pit stops, and he's still trailing him.
Yeah, he looks like he's gained a net second, doesn't he? But oh, and the spiker off backwards. Can he keep it out of the gravel? Indeed he does. Adrian Sutil has not had a stellar weekend.
So Raikkonen leads. Hamilton back up to 2nd place now after the pit stop of Fernando Alonso. And look, the Ferrari team are ready for presumably what must be Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, and Raikkonen's going to end up much closer to Hamilton. I'd be surprised if he ends up ahead of him, but he's going to end up much closer to Hamilton than he was before this first round of pit stops.
He's racing for victory here this afternoon, clearing those mirrors of all the spray. Right out on the edge of the side pods of the Ferrari. There is Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be close between the two of them.
Hamilton's at full speed, of course, but as we thought, Raikkonen much closer, but not close enough. And Hamilton steams into turn 1. But I tell you what, Raikkonen left his pit garage there literally as the nozzle was coming out of the refuel. That was either perfect or lucky, I'm not sure which, but it was to the split second. I sense Raikkonen feels he's found new pace and new confidence for this Grand Prix, because he's beginning to nibble a 1/10 of a second per sector out of Lewis Hamilton in these laps, and Lewis feeling the need to take quite extreme racing lines now. You do have to be careful out there sometimes. If there's been contact in support races or the Grand Prix itself, you tend to get a lot of debris out there that can cut a tyre, and he's had that once already this year. But I do sense that Raikkonen is shaping up for a much bigger fight with Lewis Hamilton than it appeared in the opening few laps.
And we're looking at a lot of great battles going on here. Jenson Button having a scrap with Giancarlo Fisichella. 14th and 15th places, those two. Mark Webber has just pitted and put dry tyres on. We've got a loose tyre from the Toyota pit stop coming off, you can see. Ralf Schumacher, who's been involved in a collision just a second ago with Antonio Liuzzi. And here it is.
Yeah, it's down into turn 6. Ralf went down the outside, braked later, but just turned in when there was always going to be a car there. Then starts to spin it around on the shiny white paint of the advertising hoarding. Here's another angle of it, and entirely Ralph's fault. You can't turn in just pretending there's nothing there.
Lewis Hamilton, though, will be thinking about what this man is doing. Fernando Alonso, his main championship rival, currently he's 20 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton on the racetrack, but he's all over the back of Felipe Massa in the battle for third place. And a lot could change here in the second half of this Grand Prix. Story of the first half as Alonso goes around the outside. Massa resists, and Alonso tries to cut back up the inside to take this third place away from him. And that's the first time that he's been able to do that. They had a great scrap off the start line, but ultimately it was Massa that held it. Massa dives into the pit lane then for new tyres.
Yeah, so the first of the big four then in is Felipe Massa, just as he'd lost third place. And unless it rains in the next few minutes, spot of rain on that camera as he's coming in. So that means we've got Button, Webber, Kubica, Wirtz, and now Massa out on the dry tyres. And of course they always have to make an adjustment for the two types of tyre. The wet tyre raises the ride out of the car, and you need less front downforce. You need less front downforce in wet conditions than you do in dry, so they have to make an automatic, predetermined adjustment.
There is, it's just started fine raining in here, and that's what McLaren were waiting for, just to see if the rain came, just as David Coulthard has come in to put dry tyres on. I bet he's going to be regretting that decision in a second, but the other guys on dry tyres, Wirtz, Kovalainen, Button, Webber, Ralph, Barrichello, Fisichella and Sato.
And Ralf Schumacher has his second spin of the race, and something hit a camera there down at the exit of turn 15.
Spike I can see out of the window.
But there's Lewis Hamilton, and there is Kimi Raikkonen. He got the gap down. There's the spiker that's crashed. It's right in front of the pit lane. I hope it's not blocking the pit lane. Meanwhile, at the front, Alonso's run wide there, the final corner. At the front, Hamilton has got Raikkonen now breathing right down his neck. So Lewis Hamilton had a very slow lap that last time, a 1:50. Raikkonen was 3 seconds faster than him, and this is the net result. The rain is now falling here in Shanghai, and there's going to be real pressure here. Hamilton runs wide. This is for the lead of the race, and they are championship contenders as well. Raikkonen has the momentum. Hamilton puts up a very stiff fight though and retains the lead.
I half wondered if Lewis, I don't think it's in his makeup to just let the Ferrari go. He doesn't need to fight with Raikkonen. What he does need to do, I'd have thought, is come in and get some inters, but even that's a gamble.
Well, yellow flag's waving for that incident with the spiker earlier on, so no overtaking of course allowed under yellow flag zone, and that is the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher. Hamilton doesn't get a good drive out of that final corner. Raikkonen pulls alongside him, side by side here, and Hamilton once again resists and sweeps into turn one, retaining that lead.
Super bravery as Rosberg recovers from the gravel. He's fighting for the World Championship. He doesn't really need to take too many risks with Kimi Raikkonen, but he just doesn't want to yield.
Well, the problem here is that the pace has completely gone. They're on the, as I say, rather bald, wet tyres. The rain appears to be falling lightly at the moment here, and Hamilton is dancing on a knife edge. His lap times are in the 1:55s. He's 10 seconds a lap slower than he was when he was pulling away earlier on from Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen seems to have the advantage in these conditions.
Right.
He pulls again alongside him, and Hamilton's going to have to yield this time. Through goes Raikkonen into the lead. Hamilton down into second place. He's still 17 seconds though ahead of Fernando Alonso, who's now behind him in third place. So the lead changes here in Shanghai. The new leader is Kimi Raikkonen.
Hamilton goes in too deep into what I believe is turn 8. Indeed it is. Here's 9, and Raikkonen has the racing line. Hamilton having to yield 3 abreast down the pit straight. What's going to happen here? Two Renaults, and that's just about frightened Nico Rosberg off the track. Those advertising hoardings seem as slippery as anything out there, and this is what happened. He's in a Renault sandwich effectively, and the one on the inside, they both make it through, and wow, just hanging on there through the apron, but Rosberg didn't make it. He went as far as the gravel trap.
Because his teammates sense an opportunity here. Ted Kravitz, what have you got?
McLaren have seen that, but they're just waiting until they absolutely have to bring Lewis Hamilton in. They're also waiting, Hamilton's engineers, just waiting to see what Alonso does. As in now, they come into the pits, and whose tyres have they been preparing? No, it's Alonso's tyres. They've got Alonso's tyres out in the pit lane. This is very strange. We'll see what they do at the moment. It's the dry tyre that they should be on, because everybody who's come in to put inters on again has gone much slower. And as you saw, Jenson Button is out there on dry. He's doing a good job.
Thank you, Ted. Into the pits anyway comes Lewis Hamilton. He goes straight on into the gravel trap. Can he keep the wheels spinning? Can he get some momentum going? No, he can't. It's all going to get away from him. He's not allowed to get a push. He's in the pit lane. Need to get the rule book out here and see if he can get a push in the pit lane. He's trying to keep the engine running. It's all getting away from him here. Raikkonen, the marshals don't seem to want to help him. And, well, the chance to leave here as the world champion seems to have gone away. He was struggling like mad on those tyres out there. And they didn't bring him in, the McLaren team, any earlier. And this is the result of it. It looks like it's all going to be over. The rear wheels are still turning. You can see that right rear is down to the canvas. And
I don't understand why when wide it doesn't look that slippery. The mechanics can't go down and help him. They're not allowed past the white line at the beginning of the pit lane. Ted.
Utter frustration and despair down here at McLaren. The guys at the back of the garage have got their hands on their heads. The tyres that they brought out were in Alonso's covers, but they got Lewis's tyres as well, so they were ready. They'd seen it. They got on the radio. It worked in the Nürburgring. Tell the marshals to actually push you, but it seems that the message just got lost in translation and couldn't let the Chinese marshals. But now they've got Alonso's tyres in the pit lane too. Distraught at McLaren here.
he will not leave here as world champion. And can Kimi Raikkonen win this race ahead of Fernando Alonso? Certainly had a big enough margin, certainly has the speed in the Ferrari, and both these men, their world championship hopes are still alive. In comes the defending champion.
I think he could have had a right rear puncture, because curiously the left front was waving in the air, was Lewis Hamilton's car. It just looked odd, and he had no reason to be running wide there. I think that right rear tyre may just have failed for him. Yellow flag still waving at the top of the hill in the final corner. We assume for Sutil's car as Alonso regains the racetrack.
So Robert Kubica moves up into third place in the BMW. He's just set the fastest lap of anybody. And look at this battle here. This is Massa and Alonso.
Alonso on the harder tyres. Now, we saw them scrubbing some of these tyres in qualifying yesterday for exactly these conditions. But Alonso's got to work even harder to get those tyres up to temperature than Massa, who's been on track for a while now with them. So Massa surely has got a chance to seize that position as Alonso finds out where he's at.
So two different plans at work here. The harder tyre on the McLaren of Fernando Alonso, the softer tyre on the Ferrari of Felipe Massa, which at the moment certainly looks to be the faster tyre, judging by the relative performance of these two cars. Raikkonen, of course, still out front, 14 seconds clear of Fernando Alonso.
Well, he was unsighted coming into the pit lane, and he just lost the back end of the car. He just caught it on the damp area on the way into the pit lane, I think, because he was tucked up underneath the rear wing of the car. It was Trulli who just repassed him on dry tyres. And Kubica pulling off from the lead of the Grand Prix. And that's after the hairpin. Is that a technical problem? Seems that way. He's just coasting back to the pit lane. He's not trying to recover to the racetrack. So disaster for BMW and Robert Kubica.
Well, he led briefly, but he's clearly got a technical problem. They've had a lot of problems this weekend. Nick Heidfeld in particular lost most of Friday to hydraulic and gearbox problems. I wonder if that's what's hit Robert Kubica. Ahead of Fisichella 5th, Jenson Button has dropped to 6th after making that pit stop. Tonio Liuzzi is 7th for Toro Rosso, so both of those former Minardi team cars in the points at the moment, 4th and 7th, and Heidfeld, we're riding on board with him now, is in the last of the points paying positions.
Great scrap between the two Red Bull drivers, 9th and 10th, Coulthard and Webber. They've certainly didn't work out for them in the various pit stop phases, but they're lapping now very consistently. Coulthard having had 3 consecutive 9th places here, just out of the points, of course. He's 9th at the moment too. So it's been interesting to see who's got to come in again. Surely Vettel has from 4th, Fisichella has from 5th.
He was penalised 5 places on the grid for blocking another car in qualifying, so he went back to 17th on the grid and has now managed to get himself up into 4th place. He was, of course, the youngest man ever to score a World Championship point when he scored a point for BMW in Indianapolis, the race that Robert Kubica had to miss. And now in his new team, where he will stay for next year, Sebastian Vettel is riding high again in 4th. Button is behind him in 5th place, but 15 seconds behind him, with Tonio Liuzzi in the second Toro Rosso 6th, Heidfeld 7th, and David Coulthard is into the points-paying positions in 8th place, with teammate Webber very close behind him in 9th spot.
Obviously, when I got out of the car, I was just gutted because I haven't made a mistake all year, and to do it on the way into the pit is you know, not something I usually do. But you know, you can't go through life without making mistakes, and I'm over it. Now I'm going to look on to Brazil, and I know the team is going to be working hard to make sure the car's quick enough there. So we've still got points in the back.
And perhaps more importantly, from a marketing point of view for Ferrari, their 200th Grand Prix victory, and this is one that had Raikkonen all over it from first practice on Friday, but Lewis Hamilton really gave them something to think about yesterday in qualifying. First half of the race was all about Hamilton. The second half of the race has been all about Kimi Raikkonen.
Massa's closed the gap down to Alonso to just 6 seconds, and lapping on this lap alone 1.2 seconds quicker. Not enough though, of course, not enough time.
So here comes Kimi Raikkonen to record his 14th career victory, his 4th, his 5th of this season, and a very important one that takes him through with the World Championship fight to Brazil in 2 weeks' time. Fernando Alonso is going to come through and finish in 2nd place. He too still has a very real chance of taking that World Championship crown away from Lewis Hamilton in Brazil. Massa finishes in 3rd, and Sebastian Vettel is going to take a while to come through. He's half a minute behind Felipe Massa.
So the big fight then is Kovalainen and Coulthard. That's what we're looking for. Vettel coasting down the back straight. That should just about be running on fresh air, I'd imagine. If the team are telling the driver to save fuel, they know it's a bit marginal, but he can almost roll home from there.
Well, this is the old Minardi team, and all of the mechanics are the same. They never achieved a result like this. 4th place for Sebastian Vettel, an absolutely outstanding drive. He feels like he's won it. His mechanics feel like they've won it. It's been an amazing performance, and what a recovery after the humiliation, there's no other word for it, of Fuji last weekend. Jenson Button comes through, a valiant 5th. Terrific drive from Jenson Button after losing ground at the start. And 6th is Liuzzi, 7th is...
Coulthard's going to do it in the back, look.
Coulthard at the back for the final World Championship point. Holds on from Heikki Kovalainen.
Space, and like I said, all went well. We're back in the championship, and
Fernando Alonso's mood has certainly changed over the course of the last 24 hours. Now within 3 points of Lewis Hamilton. If he wins the race, Lewis has to finish behind him to take the title in Brazil. Hamilton